At 1:47 in the morning, the camera at Nancy Guthrie's front door went dark. 41 minutes later, the signal tied to her pacemaker disconnected from her phone. By sunrise, her wallet was still inside the house. Her phone was still there. Her vehicle had not left. Her daily medication sat untouched. But Nancy was gone. No packed bag. No sign of a planned trip. No public proof of life. No public suspect in custody. Only a quiet home in Tucson, a small amount of blood near the front door, a recovered image of a masked individual, and one question that has haunted this case from the beginning. What happened inside those 41 minutes? Because the deeper investigators looked, the stranger the timeline became. A doorbell camera failed at the exact hour when the house should have been still. A medical connection went silent soon after. A woman with limited mobility vanished from her own home without the items she needed to survive. Then, ransom communications appeared. Deadlines passed, DNA evidence raised hope, and the public waited for the one update that never came. Where is Nancy Guthrie? If you follow true crime because you care about facts, timelines, and the truth behind the headlines, stay with this story. Like this video and subscribe to True Crime Investigator Alex, because this case is still active, still unresolved, and still depends on someone remembering one detail they never thought mattered. The story begins in the dark, but it does not begin with rumor. It begins with a verified timeline. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old when she disappeared from the Catalina foothills area near Tucson, Arizona. She was considered vulnerable. She had difficulty walking. She had a pacemaker. She needed daily medication for a heart condition. These are not background details for sympathy. They are central to the case because they shape what investigators believed from the beginning. Nancy was not someone expected to walk away from home in the middle of the night without her phone, without her wallet, without her vehicle, and without the medicine she needed. That is why her disappearance quickly shifted from a missing person report to something far darker. On Saturday, January 31st, Nancy went to spend the evening with family. Public reporting says she took an Uber to a family member's home in the late afternoon. She had dinner there. She spent time with people who knew her routine, her condition, and her limits. Later that night, around 9:48, she was dropped back at her own home by a family member. Authorities said her garage door opened and closed minutes later. The working assumption was simple. Nancy had returned home. She was inside. She was going to bed. For a few hours, nothing public suggests anything unusual. That quiet stretch matters, because sometime after midnight, the ordinary rhythm of the house broke. At 1:47 in the morning, the doorbell camera disconnected. That detail sits at the center of this case because cameras are supposed to preserve what people try to hide. They sit above porches, watch driveways, catch headlights, shoes, hands, shadows, and movements people never expect to become evidence. But here, at the very hour investigators later focused on, the camera stopped doing the one thing it was meant to do. Then, around 2:12 in the morning, the camera software detected movement. At the time, public reporting said the video itself was not immediately available. Later, investigators recovered footage from the system. Then came the next signal. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy's pacemaker app disconnected from her phone. The gap between those two known times became one of the most important windows in the case. 1:47, 2:28, 41 minutes. In a solved case, 41 minutes might become a clean sequence. A person approaches, a camera catches them, a door opens, a vehicle leaves, a plate is captured, a suspect becomes known. But in this case, the public timeline did not produce a clean answer. It produced more questions. Who approached the home? Why did the camera disconnect? What happened between the camera outage and the pacemaker app disconnect? Was Nancy still inside the home when that second signal failed? Was the person seen on recovered video the same person who removed her from the house? And if someone took her, where did they go? By late morning on Sunday, February 1st, concern had turned into panic. Nancy was expected at church. When she did not appear, someone contacted the family. Her family went to check on her. They entered the world every family fears. The house was there. The belongings were there. The person they loved was not. Her personal items had not vanished with her. Her phone was still inside. Her wallet was still inside. Her vehicle was still there. Her medication was still in the home. That was the first silent statement from the house. Nancy did not appear to have left in any normal way. When deputies arrived, the case began moving fast. Search efforts began. Drones and dogs were used. Investigators looked at the property, the surrounding area, and the available digital trail. But soon, what they saw at the scene pushed the case away from a simple missing persons search. Authorities later said they believed Nancy had been taken against her will. That sentence changed everything. It meant the house was no longer only a place where a woman was last known to be. It was a suspected crime scene. It meant the neighborhood was no longer only a quiet residential area. It was a possible route in and out. It meant every driveway, camera, streetlight, vehicle, and movement in the early morning hours mattered. The early public appeal was direct. Neighbors were asked to review camera footage. Anyone who saw anything unusual was asked to contact investigators. That request sounds simple, but in a case like this, it carries huge weight. A person walking at an odd hour might matter. A parked vehicle that did not belong might matter. A delivery driver passing through might matter. A porch camera that caught only a partial view might matter. A strange sound, a dog barking, a light turning on, a car door closing. All of it might matter. Because when a person disappears from a home without the things they need to survive, the smallest detail might become the first solid step toward the truth. The first chapter of this case is the camera. The camera went dark before the world knew Nancy was missing. That is what makes the timing so haunting. Most people think of cameras as passive devices. They sit quietly. They record what passes in front of them. They do not judge. They do not forget unless someone deletes, blocks, disables, damages, or disrupts them. In Nancy's case, the doorbell camera disconnected at 1:47 in the morning. That does not prove by itself who caused the disconnect. It does not prove the method. It does not prove intent. But investigators later recovered images and video showing an armed individual appearing to tamper with a camera at Nancy's front door the morning of her disappearance. The FBI released images of that unknown individual to the public. That person became the face of the mystery, even though the face was hidden. The FBI described the person as male, about 5'9" to 5'10", with an average build. He was seen wearing a black, 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack. He was masked. He wore gloves. Public reporting described a holstered gun. The FBI said the individual appeared to tamper with the camera. That is the moment the story became visual. Until then, the public had a missing woman, a house, a timeline, and a family plea. After the recovered footage, the public had an image to study: a masked figure at the door, a camera being handled, a backpack, a weapon, a person authorities wanted identified. But even that footage did not solve the case. It created a sharper question. If the camera caught him, why has the public still not learned who he is? That is where the tension deepens. Because the person in the footage took steps to hide identity: mask, gloves, covered features, dark clothing, backpack. The image gave investigators something, but not everything. A face was hidden. A name was missing. A vehicle was not publicly confirmed. And the home camera, the device closest to the truth, had become part of the crime story itself. This is where the competitor transcript builds tension. Well, it understands that the real drama is not only what the camera captured. The deeper pressure comes from what the camera did not capture, what other cameras might have captured, and what investigators still need to find. That is why vehicle movement matters. That is why routes matter. That is why cameras, beyond Nancy's home, matter. Because if someone approached the house and left with Nancy, then that person had to enter and exit the area somehow, on foot, by vehicle, through roads, through nearby desert terrain, through a path planned before the night itself. Public records do not confirm a final route. No official public document says, "This is the path the abductor used." No credible public source has confirmed a full escape path. Any route theory must remain a question, not a conclusion. But the investigative logic is clear. If a person left the area with Nancy, there should be a trail somewhere. Maybe not a perfect trail, maybe not a clear license plate, maybe not a clean face, but a trail, a headlight on a distant camera, a vehicle moving when most residents slept, a shadow near a driveway, a person passing a school, business, intersection, salon, gas station, pharmacy, church, or home camera, a car slowing where roads meet, a parked vehicle that did not belong. That is why the transcript keeps returning to vehicles. In modern investigations, vehicles often become witnesses. They store data. They pass cameras. They create patterns. They move through mapped space at recorded times. Their headlights, brake lights, doors, speed changes, and routes leave traces. A person might hide their face. A vehicle is harder to hide from every camera in a neighborhood. That is why the unanswered route question matters so much. Where did the person go after the camera went dark? The second chapter is the device connected to Nancy's heart. At 2:28 in the morning, Nancy's pacemaker app disconnected from her phone. That fact carries a different weight than a camera outage. A camera watches the outside world. A pacemaker connection points back to the person. Public reporting does not allow anyone outside the investigation to say with certainty what that disconnect means in medical or technical terms. A connection loss does not automatically tell the public exactly where Nancy was or what was happening to her body at that moment. But in the timeline, it matters. It happened after the camera disconnect. It happened after movement was detected. It happened before the family found Nancy missing. And it happened while her phone remained at the home. That creates one of the most chilling questions in the case. Did the pacemaker app disconnect because Nancy was moved away from her phone? Investigators have not publicly answered that question in full detail. They have not released every technical finding. They have not explained every data point. They have not shown the full forensic map of the home, the phone, the medical device, or any recovered signal history. But the public timeline still tells enough to build tension responsibly. The camera goes dark. Movement is detected. The pacemaker app disconnects. Nancy is gone. Her essentials remain. A vulnerable woman is missing from a home she should not have been able to leave unassisted. Those facts alone support the rising tension without adding unsupported claims. And that is the key to telling this case responsibly. You do not need to invent a villain. You do not need to accuse a family member. You do not need to claim a confirmed route. You do not need to decide whether there was one person or more. The facts already create enough pressure. A home goes quiet. Two devices fail in the same early morning window. A woman vanishes. An unknown armed individual appears on recovered video. Blood found at the scene is later confirmed as Nancy's. A ransom note investigation begins. DNA evidence is tested. The family pleads publicly, and the case remains unresolved. That is the tension. That is the story. The third chapter begins when the family enters the home. By late Sunday morning, Nancy had not shown up for church. That detail matters because routines are often the first alarm in missing person cases. People who know you notice when you break pattern. A missed call might not trigger a search. A missed errand might not create panic. But when an elderly woman with limited mobility and daily medical needs misses a known commitment, people who love her listen to the silence. Her family went to the house. Public records say they found Nancy was not there. Her personal belongings were still inside. Her phone, wallet, and vehicle remained. Her medication remained. That collection of items tells a story without raising its voice. A person leaving voluntarily usually takes a phone. A person leaving voluntarily usually takes a wallet. A person who needs medication usually takes medication, especially if she expects to be away. A person with limited mobility does not vanish deep into the night without help and leave no ordinary trace behind. That is why authorities quickly treated the situation as concerning. Search efforts began. Investigators arrived. The property became the center of a national story. The first public hours of a missing person case are always fragile. Families want action. Investigators need facts. Neighbors want to help. Media arrives. Rumors begin. Online sleuths fill gaps with guesses. And every hour without a recovery increases the fear. In Nancy's case, the fear had a medical clock attached to it. Officials and family members stressed that she needed medication. The longer she was gone, the more urgent the search became. This urgency shaped public messaging. It was not only, "Have you seen this person?" It was, "This person needs care, and time matters." That is where the story becomes emotionally painful without needing graphic detail. Nancy was not a person who could simply disappear for days and return unaffected. Her health condition made every hour serious. Her family knew this. Investigators knew this. The public learned it early. And whoever had information, if anyone outside law enforcement had it, also knew time was not neutral. The fourth chapter is the masked figure. When the FBI released recovered footage and images, the case changed in the public mind. Before the images, people had to picture the threat. After the images, they saw it. A person near the front door, a covered face, gloves, a backpack, a camera being tampered with, an apparent weapon. A figure who looked prepared, concealed, and aware of the camera. The FBI did not release the person's name because the person's name was not known publicly. The agency asked for help identifying him. That is important. The FBI was not showing the public a convicted offender. It was showing the public an unknown individual wanted for identification in connection with Nancy's disappearance. Responsible storytelling must keep that line clear. The unknown individual is not a named suspect in public records. The person's identity remains the question. The images are evidence of presence and conduct near the camera, not a public conviction. That careful language matters because true crime storytelling has consequences. A video can spread faster than a correction. A rumor can damage innocent people. A theory can become accusation in the eyes of viewers if the script is careless. So the script must stay grounded. Here is what the public record supports. The FBI released images and video of an armed individual appearing to tamper with the camera at Nancy's front door the morning of her disappearance. The FBI described the individual as male, about 5'9" to 5'10", average build, wearing a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack backpack. The FBI sought information that would lead to the identity of that individual. That is enough, because even stated carefully, it is chilling. The person at the door appears to understand the value of the camera. He appears to take action near it. He is not strolling past. He is not lost. He is not casually crossing a sidewalk. He is at the front door of a vulnerable woman's home in the early morning hours, in the same time window when she disappears. That is why the images matter. But the images also raise a painful investigative problem. If the person hid his face, what else could identify him? Height, build, clothing, backpack, gloves, weapon, or holster. Gait, movement, timing, route, vehicle, purchase records, nearby cameras, digital data, witness memory. That is why public reporting later focused on the backpack, gloves, DNA, and surveillance. Investigators were not only looking for a face, they were looking for a chain. Where did the backpack come from? Who bought one like it? Were there receipts? Were there store cameras? Was the backpack common? Could purchase data narrow the field? Were gloves found nearby connected? Could DNA from those gloves produce a match? Could a vehicle place someone in the area? Could other camera footage show the same person before or after the door camera footage? Each question is a possible doorway. But in this case, every doorway seemed to open into another hallway. The glove evidence is one example. Gloves found a few miles from Nancy's home appeared consistent with those worn by the person in the video. DNA from the gloves was tested. Authorities later said there were no confirmed matches in CODIS, the national DNA database. They also said additional DNA evidence from the residence was still being analyzed. That was not a solution. It was a setback, but it was not the end. Because no CODIS hit does not mean no value. It means the tested profile did not match known profiles in that database. Investigators still had other tools. Public reporting discussed genetic genealogy databases and additional DNA analysis. That is why the case did not stop. It shifted from immediate identification to deeper forensic work, from a possible quick hit to longer testing, from public hope to public waiting. The fifth chapter is the root question. This is where the competitor transcript gives you a strong storytelling model. The transcript does not stay frozen at the porch. It expands outward, from the porch to the driveway, from the driveway to the street, from the street to the neighborhood, from the neighborhood to possible cameras along a route. That structure works because it makes the audience move with the investigation. First, they see the house. Then, they ask how someone reached it. Then, they ask how someone left. Then, they ask why no clear public vehicle has emerged. That is a strong retention engine because each answer depends on the next. But this is also where a responsible script must slow down. Public records do not confirm the route the person took. Public reporting and commentary discuss possible routes, cameras, businesses, and neighborhood footage, but no official final escape path has been publicly verified. So, the script must phrase the route as an investigative question. If the person left by road, what cameras saw movement? If the person used a vehicle, where was it parked? If the person walked from a nearby vehicle, which direction did he come from? If he knew the area, did he choose a path with fewer cameras? If he passed through intersections, did a business camera or residential camera catch him? If he avoided main roads, did he use desert-adjacent paths or quieter neighborhood streets? Those are questions. They are not accusations. They are not confirmed answers. But they are fair questions because investigators publicly asked residents in the area to share camera footage and report suspicious activity. Public reporting says investigators canvassed nearby gas stations for suspicious vehicles. Reports also described searches around Nancy's home and nearby areas. This is where modern true crime becomes a story about devices. A doorbell camera at the home, other cameras around the neighborhood, store cameras, gas station cameras, school cameras, vehicle systems, cell data, medical device signals, search technology designed to detect electronic and medical signals. The transcript's strongest idea is this. The person might hide from one camera, but a whole environment watches more than any suspect expects. That idea gives your script momentum. The audience begins asking, where is the missing frame? Was it a car? Was it a person? Was it a backpack? Was it a glove? Was it a route? Was it a purchase? Was it a signal? This is how you create tension without adding false claims. You let the facts ask the questions. The sixth chapter reaches backward. The family later asked the public to think back not only to the night Nancy vanished, but also to the evening of January 11th. That detail matters, but it must be handled carefully. Public reporting says the family asked people to check camera footage, notes, messages, observations, or conversations from the dates around the disappearance and also the evening of January 11th. That does not prove the same individual was there on January 11th. It does not prove a rehearsal. It does not prove casing. It means the family and investigators believed details from that earlier date might hold significance. That is the responsible way to frame it. In a documentary script, January 11th becomes the question before the question. Was there something earlier that only made sense after Nancy vanished? A person near the area, a camera alert, a strange visitor, a vehicle parked in the wrong place, a delivery that felt odd, a neighbor's note, a dog barking, a light going on, a small event dismissed at the time because nothing had happened yet. That is how many investigations work. Before the crime, certain details look ordinary. After the crime, those details become potential clues. The family's message was broad for a reason. They were not asking people to solve the case online. They were asking people to look back at their own records and memories. Camera footage, journal notes, text messages, observations, conversations, no detail too small. That phrase works because it places the viewer inside the search. It reminds people that memory has a timeline. A person might not remember a license plate, but they might remember a neighbor mentioning a car. They might not remember a face, but they might remember a backpack. They might not remember a date, but a text message might place the moment. That is why the January 11th appeal belongs in the script. It expands the case beyond one night. But it does not invent a pre-crime event. It keeps the audience inside the verified appeal. The 7th chapter is the ransom confusion. In cases involving missing people, ransom communications change the atmosphere. They create urgency, hope, fear, and suspicion all at once. Public reporting says apparent ransom notes or communications were sent to media outlets. Authorities treated some communications seriously. The FBI said an alleged ransom letter had details that gave it some credibility, though authenticity was not conclusively determined in every public report. The family made public pleas asking for proof that Nancy was alive. That point is important. A ransom demand without proof of life does not give a family certainty. It gives them torment. Someone claims they have the missing person, but the family still does not know if the claim is real. Someone asks for money, but the family still needs proof. Someone sets a deadline, but the family still has no direct assurance that their loved one is alive. That is why the family's public messages carried so much pain. They were not simply speaking to the public. They were speaking to whoever might have had Nancy, or whoever claimed to. They asked for contact. They asked for proof. They said they were ready to listen. They said Nancy was valuable to them. They offered reward money later. They kept hope alive while publicly acknowledging fear. That balance matters. A family in this position lives between two unbearable possibilities. If Nancy was alive, every hour mattered. If she was no longer alive, the family still needed to know where she was. That is why the ransom chapter should not be written like a movie twist. It should be written like a human crisis. Because ransom communications also attract false leads. Authorities charged a California man in connection with an alleged fake ransom demand. Public reporting said that alleged imposter demand was separate from the earlier ransom communications being evaluated in the case. That is critical. Do not blend them. Do not suggest that the person charged over a fake demand was the abductor. Do not imply that every ransom message came from the same source. The truth is more complicated and more painful. A high-profile missing person case creates a storm. Real leads, false tips, opportunists, confused witnesses, bad actors, and desperate messages all move toward investigators at once. Every tip must be checked. Every false message wastes time. Every cruel hoax adds pain. And through all of it, the family keeps waiting for the one thing that matters most: proof. The 8th chapter is the digital witness. This is where the story gains scope. Nancy's home was not silent in the way homes used to be silent. It had devices. It had data points. It had systems that recorded, connected, disconnected, detected, and preserved fragments. The doorbell camera, the software movement detection, the pacemaker app connection, the phone left behind, possible nearby cameras, potential vehicle data, retail purchase trails, DNA testing records, search technology, tip lines, digital communication tied to ransom claims. This case became a map of partial signals. None of them, at least publicly, has solved everything, but each one narrowed the darkness by a little. The camera gave a time, the software gave movement, the pacemaker app gave another time. The phone's location mattered because the phone remained. The porch blood mattered because testing confirmed it was Nancy's. The backpack mattered because it gave investigators an item to trace. The gloves mattered because they offered possible DNA. The DNA results mattered because they showed both hope and limits. The family reward mattered because it changed public response and brought in many more tips. The public appeals mattered because they kept the case visible. The digital witness chapter should sound like this. A person can walk into the dark, but in a modern neighborhood, the dark is rarely empty. A camera watches from a porch. A phone remembers connection. A medical device leaves a signal history. A store records a purchase. A gas station records a vehicle. A neighbor's doorbell records a street. A search team scans for a device. A database waits for a DNA match. And still, even with all of that, a case can remain unresolved. That is the disturbing lesson of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Technology creates evidence. It does not guarantee answers. A camera can fail. A face can be covered. A vehicle can avoid the best angle. DNA can produce no database hit. A ransom message can be real, false, or impossible to verify publicly. A search can cover ground and still come up empty. The public often assumes that modern investigations solve themselves because cameras are everywhere. This case shows the opposite. Modern tools create leads, but investigators still need the right lead, the right match, the right witness, the right timing, and the right interpretation. That is why the competitor transcript focuses on experts. Experts help turn fragments into questions. A forensic expert looks at the blood. A former investigator looks at the scene. A security professional looks at route and movement. A reporter looks at the timeline. Each person asks a different version of the same question. What piece is missing? That is useful for your script, but it must not become a license to overstate. An expert theory is not the same as a documented fact. A possible route is not the same as a confirmed route. A suspected motive is not the same as proven motive. A person of interest is not the same as a charged suspect. A family member being last to see someone is not the same as suspicion. This is where responsible voiceover matters most. True crime does not need reckless language to hold attention. The facts here already hold attention. The 9th chapter is Fresh Eyes. Public reporting and commentary have discussed the role of the FBI, local investigators, forensic testing, outside labs, and ongoing analysis. There were also reports of tension or criticism about evidence handling, especially around DNA testing timelines and where samples were sent. Those details matter because they affect public confidence. When a case remains unsolved, people start asking whether investigators missed something. Were cameras reviewed fast enough? Were tips organized well? Was the scene protected long enough? Was evidence sent to the best lab? Were the right experts brought in early? Were family observations taken seriously? Those questions are common in high-profile cases, especially when days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months. But a script must avoid declaring incompetence unless a source documents a clear fact. The safer and more accurate approach is to say the investigation faced public scrutiny, that questions were raised about investigative steps, and that authorities continued to state the case remained active. Fresh eyes matter because patterns hide in volume. Investigators in a major case receive thousands of tips. They review hours and hours of footage. They analyze phone records, video files, forensic samples, property searches, witness statements, purchase histories, and digital communications. Inside that volume, one small detail might sit unnoticed at first. A car passing the same camera twice. A backpack purchase that matches a narrow time frame. A person whose height and build line up with the video. A phone that moved near the area at the wrong hour. A glove that seemed useless until paired with another sample. A hair sample that takes longer to process but later becomes important. A neighbor's camera that looked empty until someone enhanced the background. This is what the transcript captures well. It keeps asking what might be hidden in the edges. Not the center of the frame, the edges, the background, the parked cars, the route beyond the porch, the footage before the disappearance, the footage after, the data inside vehicles, the movement near intersections. That structure makes viewers feel the case is still alive, because the evidence field is wider than one camera. And that is true. The FBI's public page still sought information. The Arizona Safe Alert remained tied to Nancy's disappearance. Public reporting said DNA analysis remained ongoing. The family reward remained part of the public effort. Authorities had not publicly identified the unknown individual. This is not a closed story. It is an active wound. And that is why the final chapter must end with the question still open. But before the ending, the middle of the script needs a second call to action. If you are still watching, it means you care about what happened after that camera went dark. Please like this video and subscribe to True Crime Investigator Alex, because this channel follows the evidence, protects the facts, and keeps unresolved cases in front of people who might remember something. Now return to the timeline. By the second week of the investigation, the case had grown beyond Tucson. The FBI was involved. Public attention spread nationally and internationally. Savannah Guthrie, known to millions as a television journalist, stepped away from the role viewers recognized and appeared as what she was in that moment, a daughter begging for answers. That shift changed the tone of the case. The public knew the daughter, but the missing person was Nancy. The case was not about fame. It was about an elderly woman missing from her home, her family trapped between hope and dread, and a community asked to help find a person who had vanished under alarming circumstances. That distinction matters. A high-profile family draws attention, but attention is only useful if it points back to the missing person and the evidence. Nancy's children used that attention to plead for information. They asked for communication. They asked for proof. They kept asking the public to help. Later, the family offered up to $1 million for information leading to Nancy's recovery. The FBI reward had also increased to up to $100,000. Public reporting said the reward announcement led to a major surge in tips. That surge shows how rewards work in public cases. They do not solve a case by themselves. They widen the circle. Someone who stayed quiet might speak. Someone who heard a rumor might report it. Someone who doubted their memory might check a camera, a note, a message, or a date. Someone who knew the wrong person might decide the money gives them a reason, or the public pressure gives them cover to come forward. But a reward also brings noise. More tips mean more work, more false leads, more repetition, more pressure on investigators to separate memory from imagination and fact from rumor. That is why the case required discipline. Public attention helped keep Nancy's name alive. It also created an environment where misinformation could spread quickly. This is why your script must not include claims that are not documented. Do not say a certain family vehicle revealed the route unless verified. Do not say law enforcement proved a desert escape unless verified. Do not say the masked individual was seen on January 11th unless an official source confirms it. Do not say the abductor had help unless confirmed. Do not say Nancy was killed unless confirmed. Do not say the ransom notes were all real or all fake. Do not name anyone as responsible. The public record gives you enough. The 9th chapter now moves into the forensic pressure. Blood found on the porch was confirmed as Nancy's. Public reporting also discussed other DNA evidence from the home and gloves found a few miles away. The glove DNA did not produce a match in CODIS. Additional DNA analysis continued. Later reporting said DNA evidence, including a hair sample, was shared with the FBI for advanced analysis. This creates a forensic arc. First, the scene provides physical evidence. Then, the evidence confirms Nancy was injured, or at least left blood at the scene. Then, possible suspect-related items appear. Then, DNA testing raises hope. Then, no database hit arrives. Then, advanced testing becomes the next hope. That is a strong documentary sequence because it mirrors the emotional rhythm of the case. Hope, delay, setback, new possibility, waiting. But again, the script must stay calm. A hair sample does not automatically identify a suspect. A glove does not automatically belong to the abductor. A no-match result does not mean the case is hopeless. DNA evidence can take time, and public reports often arrive before the final forensic picture is complete. That is why the narrator should say, carefully, that DNA became one of the major public questions in the case. Not that DNA solved or failed to solve the case forever. The same care applies to the route theory. In the competitor transcript, the route discussion creates tension by asking why cameras along possible paths have not produced a public vehicle. That is useful storytelling, but it must stay phrased as investigative pressure. If the abductor used a road, where is the vehicle? If the vehicle passed businesses, did cameras record it? If the suspect avoided cameras, was that planning or coincidence? If no vehicle has been publicly identified, does that mean investigators have one and have not released it? Or that no clean image exists? Those are fair questions. They are not facts. The public does not know everything investigators know. In active cases, law enforcement often withholds key evidence to protect the investigation. They might have footage they have not released. They might have leads they have not confirmed publicly. They might have a vehicle description, a partial plate, a phone data lead, or DNA information not disclosed. Or they might still be looking. The public cannot know which is true unless authorities say it. That uncertainty should become part of the narration. Not every silence means failure. Sometimes silence means investigators are protecting a lead. Sometimes it means there is no lead yet. Sometimes it means evidence exists, but not enough to act. Sometimes it means the truth is sitting in footage nobody has connected. That is why the case remains so tense. The audience is watching an investigation through a keyhole. They see a few public facts. The full case file remains hidden. The 10th chapter is the question still left open. By the time the case entered its 3rd month, Nancy Guthrie remained missing. No public suspect had been charged in her disappearance. Authorities continued asking for tips. The unknown individual in the FBI images remained unidentified in public records. DNA analysis remained part of the story. The family continued seeking answers. This is the point where many true crime stories become reckless. When the facts stop, creators fill the silence. They decide who did it. They invent motive. They turn frustration into accusation. Do not do that. The silence is the story. The silence is what the family is living inside. The silence is what the investigators are trying to break. The silence is what the public might help end. The final section should bring viewers back to the 41 minutes. At 1:47, the camera disconnects. At 2:12, movement is detected. At 2:28, the pacemaker app disconnects. By late morning, Nancy is missing. Her phone is inside. Her wallet is inside. Her vehicle is there. Her medication is there. Blood on the porch is later confirmed as hers. An armed, unknown individual appears in recovered door camera video. Ransom communications complicate the case. Glove DNA fails to produce a CODIS match. Additional DNA analysis continues. The family offers a major reward. The FBI seeks the identity of the person in the images. And the central question remains, where is Nancy Guthrie? A strong ending does not need to solve what has not been solved. It needs to leave the audience with the right unanswered question. Not, who do you think did it? That invites speculation. Ask this instead. What did someone see that night and dismiss because it seemed too small? A vehicle parked where it should not have been. A person walking at an hour that felt wrong. A security camera alert with no obvious reason. A message, a conversation, a receipt, a sound, a dog barking, a light moving through a window. A detail from January 11th. A detail from January 31st. A detail from the early morning of February 1st. Cases break when someone stops thinking their memory is useless. And in Nancy Guthrie's case, one memory might still matter. Because the person who walked up to that camera did not erase the whole world. He only tried to block one view. The rest of the world might still have seen something. And somewhere, in a file, a camera roll, a text thread, a neighbor's memory, a store receipt, or a tip already sent, there might be the missing piece. The camera went dark. The signal went silent. The house kept its secrets. But the case is not over. Nancy Guthrie still has a name. She still has a family waiting for answers. She still has investigators asking for information. And she still has a public record that says this disappearance matters. If this case stays with you, like this video and subscribe to True Crime Investigator Alex. Keep Nancy's name alive, share the story responsibly, and remember this, in an active case, the truth does not need rumor. It needs facts, patience, and one person brave enough to come forward.